Things are pretty dire for renters in Ireland. Supply is low and prices are high, and not just in Greater Dublin, Cork or Limerick, but in small towns around the country. If we look at one such town, Ballina in North Mayo, a recent search on the Daft property website shows just 4 properties to rent in the whole town, and nothing under €1,000.
The housing situation in Ballina at the moment is desperate. There's literally nothing to rent in the town. Daily, as a public representative, I get correspondence, messages from people who are in situations where their landlord may have sold, where their house is in substandard living conditions with damp or mold, just poor quality housing in certain instances. So the supply is totally run dry.
Mayo is the second lowest density county in the country, so for it to have such a dire housing shortage suggests that the constraints are less physical than political. The reasons for these housing shortages are manifold. Not enough social and affordable homes, dereliction, planning delays, and landlords leaving the market. But there is another more fundamental problem. Ireland doesn't really have local democracy. What voters have instead is an illusion of democracy.
Our challenge is that Ireland has one of the most centralised systems of government anywhere in the democratic world. Most of the powers in Ireland rest with central government. We don't really have a system of local government in Ireland. What we have is we've local administration. And how that manifests itself is that over the years, more and more powers that used to be with local councils have been taken by central government or central agencies, and control has rested with those.
On June 7th, Ireland will hold local elections to choose their county and city councillors. The word election implies there's a choice to be made, but it's an empty one, because in the Irish system, councillors can't really make decisions. The real power rests with the council's chief executive, a civil servant who reports to the Department of Housing and Local Government in Dublin's Custom House. Elected councillors can certainly make representations on behalf of their constituents, but that's about it. Councillors are also nominally in control of their local area development plan, but these are tightly controlled by central government agencies, which ensure that councillors arrive at the right decisions.
You either trust people or you don't. I mean, you elect a county council to come up with a development plan. We're always being told, well, it's your development plan, it's your locality, it's your this, that and the other. But I mean, they're more and more circumscribed in what they can and can't do by a planning regulator who is accountable to nobody. I mean, again, it comes down to accountability. I mean, if you're exercising state power, you have to be accountable to the people for that exercise.
Councils in Ireland are really branches of central government. The chief executives have all the power, but are effectively anonymous, and they can't be voted out. This grants them authority without accountability, while the councillors have accountability without authority. Why is this? It seems to be an almost universal rule that any layer in a government system will seek more power for itself at the expense of lower layers. Politics is usually less party political at local level than national level, which has an increasingly performative quality that favours style over substance.
When you're a councillor, you work with all the other councillors effectively against management, right? So there isn't really a kind of a political governance of the council that you're either in or opposing. There's an alignment of councillors that have a deal on the budget and on the mayors. But outside of that, most of the time you're actually trying to convince management to do something. And most of the time you are in agreement with all the other councillors on what needs to be done. Then you go into national politics, it's much more adversarial. It's much more us versus them. It's much more jibes in the chamber and heckling and grandiose speeches.
In local government, I felt that I was far more effective, and you can be far more effective because you know the people in the local authority who make the decisions, and you can influence at a local level, and you can have some very positive input. At a national level, it's a bit more disperse, and an awful lot of national stuff now is really about what you say on the media, and it's conversation, it's what can be said as opposed to what can be done, and I was asked recently, like, what now defines a good politician? And in my opinion now, what defines a good politician is the person who can tell you what the problem is best, not what the solution is.
Irish voters, like those in Britain, are somewhat apathetic towards local government, which invokes images of brown envelopes and less than stellar candidates. But this needn't be so. Many councillors do stellar work, and generally speaking, the more power that is assigned to a position, the higher profile candidates it will attract. In Ireland's upcoming local elections, only voters in Limerick will have something approaching real democracy. The Limerick race involves some profiles that you don't normally see running for local elections, including 2 sitting TDs, 1 PhD, and 1 head of the Chamber of Commerce. The race also includes a former head of the Department of Finance, who led the successful 2019 plebiscite to grant Limerick a mayor, something that Cork and Waterford voted against. The mayor is not to be confused with a Lord Mayor, which is a ceremonial role held for 1 year. A mayor has real authority and a 5-year term to show what they can do, making it an attractive proposition to somebody who has a record of achievement and wants to help their local area. Directly elected mayors are standard practice across the Western world, and many people don't realise how big a deal the precedent being set in Limerick is.
Noel Dempsey would have tried to introduce directly elected mayors, and unfortunately withdrew the proposal in my time in the council back around the early 90s. My opinion is that yes, you're a directly elected mayor, and the more power elected representatives have locally, the better, because I think in any situation where, like, the county manager or the executive, they can make decisions, but they don't have to stand in front of the people and justify those decisions. It's the politicians that have to. So a person who is making a decision representing the people who elect him, in my opinion, is going to make better judgment.
County managers and city managers, they often do a really good job, but they're also in a straitjacket. They have a problem that they have some of the power, but none of the political mandate. And then you have the councillors who have the political mandate, but virtually none of the power. So what a mayor can do is bring those two things together and give someone day-to-day administrative power while also having a political mandate and a direction would go in. Because the county and city manager system, it doesn't really work in the sense that you don't have someone who can pursue a vision for the city as nakedly as a politician can or would want to. They often have to kind of follow a sort of a status quo approach.
A country of mayors would move Ireland away from its current system of government, which is vertically siloed or disaggregated. Right now, departments and quangos have a national focus, along narrow lines with their own offices, marketing budgets and incentives. Urgency is not their strong point, as they have full job security, generous pensions and are shielded from competition. And as we covered in our last episode, they can be quite fuzzy organisations. Take this ad from On Board Bia.
All sharing, kids raring, play date, can't wait, out again, scrambled eggs. Eggs, crack on.
These agencies are spending a fortune, and nobody knows because nobody really cares.
And I think the HSE was the start of that creation of a body that would sort of provide essential state service and not be accountable to anybody for the shambles that it makes of it. It goes back to the idea of quangos, to take accountability out of the provision of state services. I mean, I repeatedly raised UHL with Micheál Martin when he was Taoiseach, and he would say, like, it didn't matter for the HSE, as if the HSE was some body in another planet.
What a mayor gives a county is local aggregation, or joined up thinking across the vertical silos, and the mayor will knock the proverbial heads together across departments to get things done. Above all, the mayor has a sense of urgency. You might say the mayor wants to crack on, because they have a performance review with the voters every 5 years. Political and budget pressures incentivize them to spend money more wisely than fluffy quangos.
A lot of the world, we all operate on incentives, and I feel as though for civil servants or our executives in the councils, there isn't the proper incentive structure for them to progress things. There's an incentive structure for them to consult, to outsource, to get second opinions, third opinions, but there isn't an incentivization structure in place to encourage them to go and get the job done as soon as possible, and that's stifling our success as a country. It's stifling housing, it's stifling productivity, it's stifling a good quality of life for people in areas like Oranmore.
This is an important point. A chief executive has full job security, So the incentives point towards conservatism and risk aversion, not ambition and innovation.
A town like Ballina and a county like Mayo has more ambition in terms of the supply of housing and is set by the national policy. Each county, each regional town can be part of the solution of Dublin's housing crisis. It's in everyone's interest that we increase supply across the board.
In the humble view of this channel, Ballina and Mayo's housing problems are the direct result of the whittling away of local democracy in Ireland, which has been going on for decades. Central government has reduced the population to a childlike state by denuding them of local democracy and nannying them through taxpayer-funded campaigns telling them to eat their eggs. Mayo's chief executive is answerable to the Custom House, not the people of Mayo. By centralising housing, water and other basic provisions so heavily in Dublin, untold stress is heaped upon well-intentioned officials and ministers who are trying to solve all the country's problems with big sweeping solutions like strategic housing developments and 700-page planning bills. We should be moving in the opposite direction by ending the suffocation of local government and giving the counties and regions more latitude to innovate. As we've pointed out before, Ireland is the second most centralised country in the OECD. Moving towards international norms is not a radical suggestion. The democratic deficit at local level is mirrored nationally, where the strict party whip system has moved power away from TDs towards a small group of party leaders, officials and government agencies.
There is a European principle of subsidiarity, and essentially what that means is that decisions should be taken at the most appropriate level. So local issues should be best decided at a local level, national issues at national level, and global regional issues should either be decided at European or even certain issues at global level. Where is the best place to be able to solve a certain problem? And right throughout most of Europe, and indeed the democratic and even the non-democratic world, local issues, roads, sewerage, footpaths, education, even policing, are decided in the local community by local elected representatives. You're even talking about tax raising powers at a local level to be able to fund them. That's not the case in Ireland. Historically, funny enough, it was. Local councils had much more powers over what happened within the communities within which we lived. But over the years, successive governments have clawed back those powers. And the Custom House, where the Department of Local Government is based, is incredibly centralising. The civil servants there over the years have just taken the powers and taken it on board to themselves, or given those powers to agencies such as the planning regulator.
So what can be done to reverse the drift away from democracy? Let us dare to dream. In 2026, after another coalition government fails to fix the centralised gridlock in housing, the people of Mayo decide enough is enough, and an innovative campaign secures a vote for a directly elected mayor for Mayo. The election produces a local architect as the new mayor, and he surveys the task with the eye of an experienced designer. The nation's gargantuan problems look a lot less daunting at county level. Mayo doesn't need to build 80,000 houses a year, just 1,500, and getting to grips with zoning and planning is the mayor's first port of call. He decides to completely ignore the Office of the Planning Regulator, or OPR, and zone the land the county needs. And although this results in a legal challenge from the OPR, the challenge is dropped soon afterwards, on the advice of the Attorney General, who points out that the OPR, which was only created in 2019, is on shaky ground, given that it is unelected and unaccountable. Moreover, public opinion has shifted dramatically towards a restoration of democracy. The mayor also successfully secures the right for Mayo to provide its own water again, which ultimately leads to the long overdue dissolution of Uisce Éireann, formerly known as Irish Water, and the restoration of its funding to the councils. The newly liberated mayor turns his attention to the north of the county and Ballina. The town is popular among tourists, fishermen and presidents. Mr. Mayor! And every July it hosts the Salmon Festival, Ireland's oldest community festival. However, housing and a lack of ambition are the town's main problems. The mayor homes in on the area of Primrose Hill, north of the Moy Valley Business Park and the Dolmen of Form Wales, where there is ample land located within walking distance of the town and the train station. However, a telephone tower on the land poses a problem. Such an obstacle would have been enough to stall central government, with months of fruitful work turning into years of consultations, drafting and redrafting. This would see the troublesome tower bounced around between Mayo County Council and their bosses in the Department of Housing and Local Government, the Department of the Environment, Climate and Communications, and the Quango ecosystem. which includes the planning regulator, Onboard Planola, Irish Water, and the Land Development Agency, to name just a few. But the mayor maintains a laser focus on the project. His job is on the line, and he's not afraid to ruffle a few feathers in national government to knock the necessary proverbial heads together. As a result, the tower is moved in less than a year, and with it goes the last obstacle to construction. The mayor's office forms the Primrose Hill Development Company to mastermind the development, which drastically cuts down on the delays and soft costs that are the bane of construction in Ireland. After 7 years of legal disputes, master planning, design and construction, the development is completed over 3 phases. It dramatically increases accommodation capacity in Ballina, which can now house approximately 3,500 more people, easing the burden on existing residents and attracting new ones who like the quiet life and natural beauty of Mayo. The main focal point of the development is a medium-sized park in the centre of the area. Here you can find a playground, a skate bowl, some vendor kiosks, and many canopied benches from which to enjoy the beautiful Primrose Hill view. To add to the view, there's an artificial pond on the bottom of the hill with a pathway around it. The park is decorated with fish statues to honour Ballina as the salmon capital of Ireland. Opposite the park is a 4-storey building housing a pool hall on the 1st and 2nd floors, a sports bar and lounge on the 3rd floor, and a parking area on the ground floor. Alongside it is a simple semi-outdoor football pitch with a roof so it can be used in inclement weather. Both of these buildings are equipped with medium-sized parking lots. The next thing we see is a twin plaza on sunken platforms near the second entrance. Each plaza has kiosks where people can grab coffee or snacks and hang out at the cafe tables. There's also no need to worry about rain, since the plaza is protected by a canopy. On the southwest side of the plaza is a building that serves 2 purposes: work and recreation. Most of the building is dedicated to office space, but it also contains a bowling alley on the ground floor. This social spot is accessible to both office workers and the general public. Ballina has a community-driven initiative to become Ireland's greenest town, and so the lead architect opted for Barcelona-style apartment blocks because this design favours public space over drivers, reducing traffic and creating a safer, calmer urban environment. Of course, the design team couldn't help but notice that the climate in Ballina is a tad different to Catalonia's, with the town enjoying the odd shower from time to time. With this in mind, they adjusted the Barcelona-style blocks by adding colonnade structures to allow pedestrians to proceed along undisturbed by the elements, which benefits the commercial premises that rent the space on the ground floor. The upper floors house residential units that can only be accessed from accessways in the middle of the block, and all of the blocks have basement parking that's only accessible to residents. Not everything needs to be in the Barcelona style though, and the development also includes traditional 4-storey townhouses, each of which can accommodate 2 to 3 families. To further Ballina's green ambitions, the designers took great measures to encourage bike use. On this side of the railway is a 3-storey bicycle garage, where commuters can park their bikes before heading out on the train. Within the development, there are distinct bicycle lanes on every road. These lanes are clearly marked by the use of red asphalt and are detached from the main road by a low barrier, protecting cyclists from inconsiderate drivers. In some areas, designers wanted to slow traffic to favour pedestrians, and on these streets, we have cobbled paving. We realise that not all viewers will agree with our design approaches, or those of our imaginary mayor, and the Barcelona-style blocks may admittedly prove too much for some. But our goal is not to prescribe what should be, merely to stimulate a conversation about what could be. This brings us back to the present day, and the democratic deficit that exists in Mayo and elsewhere in Ireland. The success of any democracy rests on the calibre of people it attracts, and our current system is off-putting to anyone who wants to make a difference. Rather than being able to put their skills and talents to good use, candidates can expect to get bogged down in the quagmire of coalition government, in which the programme that the politicians eventually agree bears little resemblance to what people voted for. In a localised system, different regions are free to deviate on policy. Good ideas would only need to take hold in one area to win out, while bad ideas would die faster. This would turn counties into policy sandboxes, where policy is tweaked and discovered in a bottom-up fashion, not prescribed from on high. Democracy emerged in Greek city-states, where the demos, or population units, were small. A more localised Ireland based on mayors would be more democratic and more responsive to the needs of the people. But such a system could only work when mayors are given real tax and spend powers, combined with the right to issue municipal bonds, rather than relying on handouts from central government. Some mayors will be better than others, but when the stakes are higher, better candidates will be drawn in, perhaps including some current and former titans of industry who wish to give back to their local areas. Moreover, in such a system, voters will take more of an interest in what's going on in local government. If people don't like what the mayor is doing, they can vote them out. Or if all else fails, move to another county whose mayor is doing a better job. We'd love to hear your thoughts on directly elected mayors, and we'd really appreciate your support on patreon.com/policy, where for just €5 you can chat with us and other members. You can also buy us a coffee using the link in the description below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you'd like to see more from us. Thanks for watching, and slán go fóill.
And oh, one more thing. Mayo for Sam! Mayo for Sam!